Here in Niagara, almost 21,000 students have returned to school at the Niagara Catholic District School Board. About 16,000 of those elementary, the rest secondary. Joining us now, the brand new Director of Education, Camillo Cipriano. Camillo, welcome to the program. I know you and I met long distance this summer, but this is our official welcome to you because you are now in this role for a couple of weeks. How have you settled in, first of all?
Thank you, and it's nice meeting you face to face. It's been a great first couple of weeks. Officially, I started September 1st. The people that I've met at the board office, I've visited a few schools, both elementary and secondary, meeting with teachers, with students, social distancing, with some parents as well in parking lots, and it's been nothing but a very welcoming environment. Obviously, we've had some challenges, as most school boards across the province have had, so we've been working hard to try and smooth out some of those bumps.
Returning to school is something that really had to happen in one way or another. Do you feel that all the different ways that this has been approached across the province, do you feel that that is doing the best for students, the different ways that different boards are handling this?
It's an excellent question. I think what it's done is given parents some choice. And so we recognize that parents and students are all at different places of comfort. And so while it's made it a challenge for school boards, planning for in-school, planning for virtual, and planning for adaptive for our secondary students, which means that they come half the week and they're home half the week, I think it's given some parents, I hope it's given some parents some comfort that they have some choice. And recognizing that some of our students and some of the families that they come from are in positions from a health perspective that they need to be prepared and they need to be safe. And so I get comfort that although it's made it a little bit more work for our staff, our parents have a better sense of what works for them.
The province gave a lot of guidelines, but they didn't give you concrete directions for each board. So really you were left to come up with your own plan, present it to the province. And some of those boards actually were told to go back to the drawing board. That didn't happen with Niagara Catholic.
It did not. So I was very lucky because I wasn't part of the Niagara Catholic task force, led by our former Director of Education, John Crocco, senior staff, principals, all different employee groups. Students were on our task force. Some parents were on our task force. So we really had a 360-degree look at our schools coming back based on the guidelines from the province. And so we tried to build a plan, again, that worked for the different types of families in our communities. And it was approved by the ministry, correct.
Was it difficult to come up with that plan when you didn't at the time yet know how much money was going to be allotted for PPE and different other guidelines that would have to be in place for a safe return in September?
It was. We planned for certain requirements, recognizing that we would have to have those in place, whether they be funded by the ministry, whether they be funded by board budgets. Thankfully, the ministry did provide boards with funding in many areas around health and safety, transportation, staffing, custodial, and PPE, obviously. Having said that, there's still some expectation and requirements for boards to be utilizing or the ability for boards to use their own board budget to supplement what the ministry provided.
Have you had to dip into Niagara Catholic reserves a lot to fund this?
We have not to this point, recognizing that we anticipate that we will most likely have to dip into some of our reserves because we're anticipating some increasing costs with it throughout the first few months of the fall. There's going to continue to be changing to staffing, changing to our classes and class lists. We're anticipating having to add more teachers, more teaching staff. And so the anticipation is that we will have to dip into our reserves.
In the elementary panel, were you able to keep class sizes down at a manageable size?
We're very happy that in the elementary panel, we're well below all the ministry requirements for in-school class size aggregates. So at the kindergarten level, at the primary grade 1, 2, 3 level, and the junior intermediate level, which is grade 4 to 8. Having said that, we recognize that it's an average, it's an aggregate across the entire system. As you mentioned, we have thousands of students. There's hundreds of classrooms across the system. There are going to be some one-offs or several that are higher than those averages, and that's where it goes back to we're anticipating having to add some staff to try and reduce those fewer classes and there's a small amount, but some of those handful of classes that are larger than the average in numbers that we recognize that we need to bring down.
So there will still be some new staff hired. What about the public health nurses that the province, I believe they promised 500 new public health nurses. Are any of them now in positions at Niagara Catholic schools?
We just heard from our public health partners in the Niagara region that we have public health nurses that are being assigned to several of our elementary schools. And so although they haven't been in physically in our schools as of today, there are plans to be working with our principals in those schools that we've identified that they will be going into our schools.
When secondary schools started planning for September, there was a lot of talk about quadmesters. I believe the proposal from the Toronto District School Board was a quadmester system. You decided, well, not you, but your predecessor, Mr. Crocco, and the organization, the team, I guess, decided to do one class at a time for secondary over 22 days. Is that correct?
We call it octomester.
Octomester.
Yes.
So how has that been accepted by the students themselves, first of all?
Again, from my understanding, the students are for the most part, again, there's always some exceptions, are happy with it because they're able to focus on one subject area at a time. And so it satisfies, from a health and safety perspective, the greatest level of health and safety, of controlling a group to limit the exposure to other students. Where the quadmester, you are going in and out of 2 classes a day. The octomester, you're in 1 class all day long. So your bubble, your cohort is who you're with the entire day. What it also does, and I think parents and families and students especially appreciate, it allows for the option to change your modality of learning on a more regular basis. So every 22, every 23 days, if a parent and child decides virtual is not working for me or in-person is not working for me, I'd like to switch to the opposite, it gives you that option. Whereas an octomester, that's double the amount of days that you're in school before you can make that change. So approximately 2.5 months.
A very successful start to the semester, you would say?
Yes, successful in the sense that, as I said, we recognize there's some hiccups. We're overcoming them as we find them, as we discover them, but very successful from all counts, yes.
Camillo, thanks for joining us today on The Source. Best of luck for a great school year at Niagara Catholic, and welcome to Niagara. The province's back-to-school plan has not been met with universal acclaim by everyone. After the break, we'll hear from a Brock professor who has some specific concerns. Stay with us on The Source. We'll hear those concerns next.